This is BBC Newsline, the headlines this Thursday evening.
They're still negotiating at Stormont, but there's no deal yet.
Northern Ireland peer Ken McGuinness is at the centre of a row over allegations that he made homophobic remarks about a Scottish MP.
No, I'm not altogether a softie.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean by that. And the queers like Miss Bardell don't particularly annoy me.
The member from the other place who I have complained about has now launched a homophobic attack on me in the press. This will be reported to the police.
A tripling in the number of people waiting more than 12 hours in an emergency department over Christmas compared to last year. Some regret in Northern Ireland at Harry and Meghan's decision to step back from royal duties.
That next generation of young people here who saw a different style of the royal family and his engagement and his willingness to sit down at that level with young people and show he was genuinely interested. We'll probably miss that.
Also on tonight's programme.
In a few days' time, the Grand Opera House in Belfast will close for 10 months to facilitate a major restoration of its interior. Join me later on BBC Newsline to find out more.
There's uncertainty over this Sunday's McKenna Cup semi-final as a standoff develops between Ulster GAA and Donegal.
And after a chilly and frosty start tomorrow, it looks like we will get to enjoy some sunshine, but for how long? I'll have your forecast shortly.
The parties are still locked in talks at Stormont, but we still don't know if there's going to be a deal to restore devolution. It's the third anniversary of Martin McGuinness's resignation as Deputy First Minister. The former Ulster Unionist leader Mike Nesbitt said earlier it's time for parties to make a decision. From Stormont, I'm joined by our political correspondent Gareth Gordon. Gareth.
Well, there's certainly a feeling around this building tonight, Tara, that we've reached a critical point. But a short time ago, crucially, the DUP said they were still negotiating. This is the story of yet another ultimately frustrating day. Not much happens quickly around here, as history shows. It's 3 years since Martin McGuinness resigned, triggering the crisis that brought Stormont down. Is now the time, finally, to bring it back.
The process that we're in now, and there is a real deadline looming of Monday, the process that we're in now is a process that was called by the two governments. It is their process. So they very clearly have an obligation to deliver on what Martin McGuinness set out to achieve, to deliver the promise of the Good Friday Agreement, to deliver good government, to deliver sustainable government, credible government, and that remains the case. And that has to take into account all the issues that have been raised with all of the parties.
And with that, she was off without any more questions, meaning that business may not quite be done yet.
There is a time to negotiate and there is a time to decide. And this is the time to decide. We as the Ulster Unionists have a problem about making a decision. We haven't even had a briefing on the paper, never mind sight of the proposed resolution to what's going on.
There can only be an executive if the DUP and Sinn Féin find agreement, but the quality of that executive is down to the SDLP, the Ulster Unionist and the Alliance Party. I think it's really important that the SDLP gets to see the text so that we can judge it, because we genuinely need to get back to work.
If we fail at this hurdle, it'll be unforgivable. The time is running out, and that's why I say I'm optimistic that a deal will be done, because to not do it is unthinkable.
Sinn Féin today unveiled two newly co-opted MLAs. When will they get to sit in the Assembly chamber? That's the question. That is the question, and I'm afraid it's a question still without an answer. Now, for most of the day, the one party we hadn't heard from was the DUP, and of course, before Christmas, that was said to be the party that was standing in the way of a deal. We've known that they've been locked in negotiations and talks among themselves here at Stormont for most of the day, and then around 6 o'clock, they took us by surprise. Sir Geoffrey Donaldson came to the microphone, and this is what he said.
We're working towards getting an agreement. And as I've said, it's important that that agreement is fair and balanced, and that is our absolute priority in this process. We will continue to represent the interests of all the people of Northern Ireland in seeking to get an agreement that ensures that this place is up and running again, on a secure and sustainable basis. And to be clear, we don't want to sign up to a deal only to find in a few months' time that we have another political crisis. So those are the kind of issues and the priorities that we need to ensure are being properly and adequately addressed before we can put our hand to a deal that we believe will have the support of a very clear majority of people in Northern Ireland. Thank you.
So Gareth, how do you interpret that?
Well, that is what we call in the business a holding statement. It tells us that the DUP has still got issues to perhaps resolve, if not with the governments, certainly with members of its own party, but it's certainly not saying no. We know that many of the party's MPs, senior people in the party who would need to be around here, perhaps if the party was going to agree to something, they've been coming back throughout the day. The MLAs have been talked to, the MPs have been talked to, all the senior people in the party that perhaps are required to reach an agreement. We know the DUP have had issues over an Irish Language Act and indeed over the petition of concern. I'm assuming the talking will go on tonight. I don't necessarily think we'll get an answer from the DUP tonight, but something is probably coming soon. You will remember in February 2018, we believe that the DUP, or some of them, had reached a deal only for that to collapse when rank and file members of the party said no. The DUP certainly do not want anything like that to happen again.
Gareth, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you. The Northern Ireland peer Ken McGuinness is being referred to the police over remarks he made about an MP in an interview. Earlier today, he denied using the word queer in relation to a Scottish MP. But in the last hour, the news website he gave the interview to has released a recording of their conversation. Declan Harvey has the story.
This is a row about a row. Scottish MP Hannah Bardell fired the opening shots yesterday when she named and shamed Ken McGuinness in the Commons after witnessing him having an altercation with a Westminster security guard.
He proceeded to verbally abuse and shout at both the member of staff.
Lord McGuinness doesn't deny the row.
I wouldn't use the term abusive, but I certainly was annoyed.
And to the BBC he said he believes Miss Bardell is simply point scoring. But the Huffington Post claimed that he used different words. They reported him having said, "She and I are known to be on other sides. I'm opposed to gay people like her seeking to change marriage. With no disrespect, I have had a lot of experience before politics. Queers like Miss Bardell don't particularly annoy me." Having read the remarks herself, Hannah Bardell was back on her feet today.
I'm sorry to say that the member from the other place who I have complained about has now launched a homophobic attack on me in the press. This will be reported to the police, and I know that I and others consider this to be a hate crime.
The attack on the Honourable Lady was unutterably disgraceful, and she is clearly owed an apology by the noble lord for what he said.
Ken McGuinness has caused controversy before. In 2013, he was convicted over road rage. In the past, he's also linked homosexuality to bestiality. But earlier today, he flatly denied saying what the Huff Post had said he said.
I certainly didn't call her a queer. Whether I was asked a question about which used that particular term, I'm not sure.
The Huffington Post has stood by its story, and this evening the journalist involved has released online a recording of his interview with Lord McGuinness. A recording apparently Ken McGuinness wasn't aware was being made.
So I'm not altogether a softie.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean by that. And the queers like Miss Bardell don't particularly annoy me.
The issue of whether these remarks potentially constitute a hate crime will be something for police to decide. Declan Harvey, BBC Newsline.
The number of people who waited more than 12 hours in an emergency department over the Christmas holidays has tripled compared to the same time in 2018. Nearly 2,500 people sat for that length of time before they were seen, treated and either discharged or admitted to a hospital bed. I'm joined by our health correspondent, Mary Louise Connolly. More bleak news about the health service. What do you make of these figures?
Bleak indeed, Tara. In fact, these figures are staggering, but they reflect reality. This is what's happening inside Northern Ireland's emergency departments, and they provide a snapshot specifically over that Christmas 2-week holiday period. So 2,435 people spent more than 12 hours waiting, as you say, to be seen, to be treated, to be either discharged or admitted. And that's 3 times more than the same period last year. And of those 1,700 extra people that were seen this year, well, over 1,000 of them were 65 years and older. So quite a lot of the older population that we're talking about. And while 12-hour waits aren't unusual here, let's face it, again, Northern Ireland compared the worst across the UK. But what is most striking is really that huge jump, which shows just how many people in Northern Ireland are using the emergency departments.
And more strikes tomorrow and more appointments cancelled.
That's right, Tara. Firstly, patients who have not been contacted by their health trust should attend as normal. They're one of the lucky ones. They should go as planned. But thousands of outpatient appointments have been cancelled, procedures, vaccination clinics, and the best piece of advice I can give is for our viewers to log on to their individual health trust and they will see laid out in black and white what is working and what's not. Meetings did take place today between the health unions and members of the health department over pay parity and over safe staffing levels. They want procedures formally put in place, and there was a meeting with the Secretary of State, Julian Smith. This jigsaw is far from complete, as we know. With a massive strike looming tomorrow involving the RCN and Unison, and with what's happening in our emergency department, well, let's face it, the political parties and the Secretary of State don't need to go very far to find an incentive to try and find a solution to these talks, even if that happens at the 11th hour this evening.
OK, Mary-Louise, we'll leave it there, but thank you. Now, the announcement by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex that they're to step back as senior royals has made headlines around the world. The couple last visited here just before they were married. Louise Cullen reports.
Nearly 2 years ago, Harry and Meghan surprised young people involved in a peace-building project the Prince had previously launched. It's roles like that, some fear, may bear the brunt of the couple's decision.
That next generation of young people here on this island, both north and south, who saw a different style of the royal family and his engagement and his willingness to sit down at that level with young people and show he was genuinely interested. We would probably miss that.
Harry, who's the Baron of Kilkeel, has been vocal about the strained media focus put on his family and before that on him through the years, bringing back memories of what his mother faced.
He has gone through a very sudden death of his mother and he's admitted he's needed counselling for that, and also Meghan herself as well. Clearly wasn't well when she had the ITV interview with Tom Bradbury. And I would say that with respect to everybody in everyday life, I would say look after yourself and think proactively about things. But if things get really bad, then you must take constructive action, very proactive action. Get out of something, move a job or whatever. And I'd relate that to them in terms of what they're doing now.
When the royals are in Northern Ireland, they stay here in Hillsborough at the official residence. And Harry and Meghan were at the castle on their visit in 2018. But it has to be said their announcement has had a mixed reception in the town.
I think it's a little disrespectful to the Queen, I'd have to say, because apparently they didn't discuss it very much with her. But if that's what they want to do...
some sympathy for them, but really, couldn't care less.
I'm very shocked about it, and I'm very sorry for the Queen.
Days before her last visit here, Princess Diana also announced she was reducing her royal duties. And like her son, she hadn't consulted Buckingham Palace. Is the monarchy's role as a steady figurehead in troubled times changing?
I certainly don't see any serious implications either for the royal family or for the Union. I'm afraid there may potentially be serious implications for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, because they can't be half in and half out of the royal family.
So all change, or maybe no change, time will tell. Louise Cullen, BBC Newsline.
Well, on Monday we reported that at least 5 people took their own lives over the Christmas and New Year holiday, including an 11-year-old boy. That led to calls for a mental health emergency to be called, an appeal that was supported by those across the sector. Today, our reporter Kelly Bonner spoke to one young man who tried to take his own life 3 years ago. He told her it's important that those in crisis know that help is available.
When you're not in the right frame of mind, you don't think of no one.
don't think who you're leaving behind. I know myself what it's like.
Geroid has suffered from mental health issues from a young age. He started using drugs and at 16 he tried to take his own life.
A few days before I went and seen my doctor, I asked her, like, I really do need the help here. I'm going through a very hard time. I started slowly going downhill. Got really bad anxiety. Then my mental health started to go.
Geroid ended up in hospital in a coma for 13 days.
It was scary. And
Were you glad to be alive?
yeah, I can say I'm one of the lucky ones. I survived. We all have bad days. Bad days will pass before you get the good days. It's always going to be bad.
Unfortunately, Geroid's story isn't unique. In Northern Ireland alone, 6 people die by suicide every week. And here in Belfast, from January 2019 to November 2019, 67 people took their own lives. But help is available.
If you're a mother or father, you can also get contact any of our groups within North Belfast or Belfast wide, but also Lifeline, and they will give you advice and help.
The Department of Health say that it is important for people to know that support is available. They say that suicide prevention remains a priority for the department, and that is why they published Protect Life 2 strategy in September 2019. It hopes to reduce Northern Ireland's suicide rate by 10% in the next 5 years. But the strategy, agreed 4 years ago, is still not fully implemented. Kelly Bonner, BBC Newsline, West Belfast.
Well, if you need help or advice about the issues raised in that report, details of organisations which offer advice and support can be found on the BBC's Action Line. That's online at bbc.co.uk/actionline, or you can phone for free at any time to hear recorded information. That number is 0800 066 066. And some breaking news we can bring you on a story we covered earlier in the programme. The Metropolitan Police in London has just confirmed it's now investigating remarks made by Lord McGuinness about a Scottish MP as being a potential hate crime. Coming up between now and 7. We're inside Belfast's Grand Opera House before a 10-month shutdown to allow vital restoration work. Now, Christmas is well and truly over, but the work to deal with all the household waste generated over the festive period is still at full pitch. An extra 500 tonnes a week has been turning up at one of the biggest recycling centres in Belfast. Our agriculture and environment correspondent Conor Macaulay went along for a look.
Well, if you want proof that people had a really good Christmas, then just take a look at this. This mountain of glass, most of it has to be said, bottles of alcohol, turned up here in the last couple of days as all those recycling bins and Kirby boxes were emptied. We're at the Bryson Recycling Centre at Mollusk on the outskirts of Belfast. It deals with waste from around about 500,000 homes on behalf of a number of councils across Northern Ireland, and this is a really busy time of year for them. With me here is Eric Randall from Bryson Recycling. Eric, give us an indication, just how busy are you at this time of the year?
Well, I'd say most weeks we're bringing about 1,000 tonnes. Last week we brought in about 1,500 tonnes of materials. We get a lot of glass, a lot of cardboard, anything you associate with Christmas, it comes through us. And
in fact, you were telling me earlier, it actually starts before Christmas because of the changing way in which people shop.
Yeah, because people are buying so much stuff online. We've seen in the last 10 years that's really increased, and cardboard is coming through in large amounts from kind of early December, really.
What ultimately becomes of a lot of this stuff?
Basically what we do is send it off to companies that actually turn it back into new products again. So glass gets turned back into glass bottles again, aluminium straight back into aluminium. Paper that we collect, a large amount of it goes to a company called Huhtamaki in Lurgan, and they turn it back into egg boxes and other moulded fibre products. Plastic bottles, some of them, your milk bottles, get turned into pipes, which are used for kind of agricultural and civil engineering sector. So there's an amazing world of reprocessing out there.
There's just a couple of simple messages from staff here. If you're putting out your food packaging, for example, if you could just give it a bit of a rinse out, that makes life a lot more pleasant for everybody here. Second is nappies. That's a particular problem. 1/4 of a tonne of those a day are turning up in the recycling bins here, and really that shouldn't be happening. And finally, whatever you do, don't put in one of these. It's a ceremonial sword which turned up in a recycling bin and is now kept here as an example of how not to do recycling.
Now, this Sunday, the Grand Opera House in Belfast will close for 10 months to allow for a £12 million restoration project, partly financed by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. The gap in stage productions until November has led to some staff redundancies, but the workforce is to be increased again ahead of its reopening. Donna has been to see what's planned.
The interior, dating back to Victorian times, has faded, and it's clear this place needs more than just a lick of paint. Since 1895, the Grand Opera House in Belfast has been a memory maker for performers and audiences.
If I were a rich man, and over like the devil when you get back home.
It's been 40 years since there has been significant interior restoration work of any kind. This project very much focuses on the beautiful and ornate auditorium. It's one of the most important theatre interiors in the UK and Ireland. So this project will restore and repair all of that wonderful plasterwork in the auditorium, including the balcony fronts, the top of the boxes, and of course the very famous elephant's heads. Brand new seats throughout. The current seats are 40 years old. We are installing a brand new air handling system to make it more comfortable for people. And in 1980, the glass extension that sticks out onto Great Victoria Street was added. That was closed in 2006 and has just been a meeting room ever since. So one of the practical things we're doing is reopening that area.
You enter the Grand Opera House through these doors in the newer part of the theatre that was built in 2006 at a cost of £10 million. But it too is set to change.
A lot of people have been through the doors during the time. We are having record numbers coming through the Grand Opera House, and we think that this part of the building could be better utilised. So for example, on the top floor of the Act 2 building, which is currently a dead space, we will be installing the Grand Opera House's first ever permanent exhibition telling the very, very rich and extremely colourful history.
Throughout the 125-year history of the theatre, we have had every type of performance that you can imagine, and we've had circus, we have musical theatre, and we have drama. We've had lots of big names, and we've had Pavarotti, and we're very honoured to have our link with him. He made his UK debut here on the Grand Opera House stage. And we've had Liam Neeson, we've had Kenneth Branagh, we have had just all of the big names coming through the theatre.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, we got a few of the Price is Right crowd in as well. There we go.
Because the theatre has a very important role to play and has a really special place in the heart of people of Northern Ireland, that I think it's really important that we preserve and maintain the building, the interior of the auditorium as it is today.
The pantomime is such an important part of the calendar of this place. The theatre opened its doors in 1895 with the panto, and it will reopen in the autumn of this year with another, kick-starting a new era in the life of this iconic theatre.
Now, a standoff has developed between Ulster GAA and Donegal. Mark Sidebottom has this evening's sport. Hi, Mark.
Thanks to our story breaking as we're on air. Good evening, everyone. Although not yet confirmed by their county board, BBC Newsline understands Donegal will pull out of Sunday's McKenna Cup semi-final against Monaghan. 13 of Donegal's panel are involved with university teams, and a further 8 have a virus. The management asked for the match to be deferred. Ulster GAA said no, and I understand Donegal GAA will officially withdraw from the competition later this evening. As for the other semi-final, it does go ahead. Mickey Hart's men Tyrone will meet Down following a 3-point win over Armagh in last night's high-scoring game. Here's Nicola McCarthy.
It was a repeat of last year's final at the Athletic Grounds, and it was the eventual winners and holders Tyrone who got off to the better start. 4 different names on the score sheet within the first 10 minutes, evidence of their attacking prowess. One of them, Ronan O'Neill, delivered the first goal of the game as Tyrone piled on the pressure. Mickey Hart's side didn't let up, and it was Ronan O'Neill again with their second goal, lobbing the Armagh keeper from distance. Rian O'Neill pulled a goal back for Armagh just before the break after a mistake from Ben McDonnell. Tyrone picked up where they left off in the second half, their attack cutting through the Armagh defence and at one stage opening up an 8-point gap. A penalty offered Armagh a chance to get back into the game though, and Stephen Campbell took full advantage. Substitute Rory Grugan also kept hope alive with this excellent finish, narrowing the gap between the two sides to just 2 points. That scoreline would have ensured that both sides went through, but Darren McCurry's point for Tyrone in the dying moments ended Armagh's hopes.
I think credit to Armagh. I think we were ahead of them on a number of occasions, and they kept coming back. They didn't let go, and it made it very difficult for us to hold out to win.
Tyrone will now face Down in the semi-finals on Sunday. Nicola McCarthy, BBC Newsline.
Quick cricket line, Ireland's men playing the West Indies in the second one-day international in Barbados. Ireland currently 96 for 2 wickets, and that's after 19 overs. And that's your sport, Tara.
Mark, thank you. Let's get the weather now. Barra's here.
Thanks very much, Tara. Not a bad day outdoors after what was quite a chilly night, and it's going to be another chilly night in the forecast as temperatures widely fall to freezing and below. And overnight last night we did even get a touch of snow. This was the scene in Culca Mountain in County Fermanagh. Thank you for your photographs. Do keep them coming in. There will be a little bit of wet weather pushing its way eastwards through this evening, but that will clear, and then when the skies clear, temperatures fall to freezing and below. So we are likely to see some frost around first thing tomorrow morning, possibly the odd stretch of ice as well. But we can look forward to some sunshine before it turns more unsettled by the end of the day. So to begin with tomorrow, a chilly, frosty start for quite a few of us, but a largely dry start, plenty of sunshine. Lots of sunshine through much of the day before we see this weather front coming in from the Atlantic. That's going to bring some stronger winds and outbreaks of rain. But before then, many places will enjoy quite a bit of dry and sunny weather, especially towards the east coast. But by the end of the day, that wet weather will have pushed eastwards across all counties towards rush hour. Top temperatures tomorrow, 6 to 8 degrees. So quite unsettled tomorrow evening and overnight into Saturday. We have this area of low pressure pushing its way eastwards. It's going to be bringing some strong winds and outbreaks of rain tomorrow night, overnight into Saturday, and for much of Saturday itself. Gradually, by the end of Saturday, we will begin to see that rain pulling away towards Britain, drying up behind it. So on Sunday, we can expect a much better day, but it is also going to be colder. Saturday looks as though we'll get highs of 12, maybe 13 degrees. Come Sunday, we're likely to see 6 or 7, but on the upside, dry weather for most of us, just the odd scattered shower and with some sunshine. A quick glimpse into next week, and it looks as though we will have some stormy weather heading our way.
That's it from us. I'll be back at 10:25. Until then, have a very good evening. Bye-bye. Don't want to hear that.